I'm not quite from the city, but I'm from this area, so Hamilton area. I went to Fairfield High School. My parents graduated from the same high school I did, and so we have deep roots and lots of family. I grew up with 4 grandparents, 15 aunts and uncles, tons of cousins, all within 10 miles of my house. And so family, when I think about Cincinnati, I think of family. And so for me, I left in 1990, went to college up in Cleveland. Cleveland was not like Cleveland. In the same state, but completely like foreign country compared to Cincinnati. And got out as quick as I could, and ended up living in Vanderbilt in '94 for medical school. And that's when, a couple years later, I had grown up here in a Baptist environment and had a Holy Spirit encounter in college, and then that went away, and then went to Nashville and was Presbyterian for a while. And my last 2 months of medical school, me and a buddy of mine were in Ghana in West Africa, and it was just us two, the only white guys, for 2 months. In an all-African mission hospital, and it rocked my world. And God just messed me up. And God very clearly showed me that what I knew of Him looked nothing like who He was. And it took the Africans and their obvious faith, obvious dependence upon God, obvious reliance upon the Holy Spirit in a real, everyday way, just to show me, wow, okay, God, you're very different. I need to know you. And so I had my seminary, life lessons, all kinds of stuff happen to me in 2 months in Ghana in a way that you couldn't replicate. You couldn't buy a degree for as much as God showed me in that 2-month time period. So Holy Spirit just messed me up. I came back to Nashville to start my residency, and the Presbyterian church didn't know what to do with me. It was like I was this foreign creature, and shortly afterwards, God led me to Bethel World Outreach Center, where I met Brian and Siobhan. Well, Brian first, pretty early on, as a guy at Vanderbilt. Brian was at Vanderbilt, and we kind of started hanging, out with some pastors, and pretty quickly, God just began to work on me. And when I finished up residency, God had given me a word at a conference at apostolic medicine. I had no idea what that means. I'm still trying to figure out what that means. The idea of planting medicine in a church, and I didn't know. I had been taking our Bible school there, and I told this word to my pastor, and he's like, "Oh, I don't know what that means." He says, "Well, we'll just put you on staff as a pastor of the church." I was like, "What do you mean you just put me on?" That was not how we did it when I went to the church I grew up in. But he saw something in me, and so I finished up residency, and for 5 years, I was part-time as a doctor, and the rest of the time I was on staff at the church. And while there, they threw me into all kinds of stuff. I'm like, we need a campus minister at Vanderbilt. We need one actually at Belmont and Lipscomb, and these schools that were nothing like a bunch of musicians. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with a bunch of musicians and these artsy types. I'm like, that's not who I am. But God just, Christian and I got married, and He just trained us in a lot of ways how to do campus ministry and how to minister to people when there wasn't a lot of training manuals, and we just got thrown into doing faith and doing life with people. And so Brian came on staff at Bethel as well, and so we were on staff for a while there together before Pastor Tim asked us to go to Orlando with him, and we didn't feel that was part of the church plan we were supposed to be a part of, but Brian and Siobhan did go off. And but I'm from here, and within the last 12 or so months, God began to stir in my heart the idea of coming back to the city. And as you said, my mom's been praying for over 20 years to get us back to the city. Every time I come and talk about Nashville, we need good doctors here too. We need to do this. Like, I know, Mom, I'm just tired of hearing about it. But we were at a conference in Orlando last summer, the Every Nation Conference, and there was a picture of key cities in America that did not have Every Nation churches, where there were large amounts of college students, large like that did not have a presence, and these are places that were believing God as a ministry to have an impact in. And I noticed it was like this, like flashing light, Cincinnati was a big star on that map. I remember thinking, interesting. And of course, I'm from here. I got still tons of family here. She's not from here, and I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what that means exactly. We've been asked to go to another church plant in Toronto, and I'm like, I love Canada, but I'm not going to live in Toronto. I'm like, oh gosh, that's a city, bigger than Atlanta. Just in cold and snow. I'm like, I don't think I can do that here. But we just told our pastor we'd pray about Toronto. And as we prayed Toronto, I'm like, listen, the only place I would ever think about planting a church would be Cincinnati. And then over the next 6 months, God began just to drop seeds in our spirit. And then as a church, we fast and pray first week of January. And Christy and I kind of committed to doing that. My mom had got some job interview lined up for me in Dayton and told some hospital chain CEO of like 7 hospitals up there that she would give them a large donation to my hometown hospital in Hamilton if he could recruit me back here. And so this man starts calling me. Starts emailing me. This is a CEO of like 7 hospitals. Okay, he's calling. And I'm like, Mom, what did you promise this man? Because he is like relentless. And I'm thinking, I'm not moving to Dayton, God. What is this? And so, long story short, my grandmother, my first of 4 grandparents, I just turned 40 years old, and I had 4 living grandparents up until February. Well, my grandmother died in February. And so as we were coming back up here, I ended up preaching the funeral at Landmark Baptist, just in Glendale area. And I may have been the first non-Baptist pastor to ever stand in the pulpit. But it was, I think, when I was there, and Christy said she saw a real mantle for the city, just in terms of speaking. And like, that was the church I was born at, and it's like this strange come full circle. And just family thing. So ultimately, I talked to our leadership back in Nashville and said, hey, what's going on in Cincinnati? Is there plans for a church there? Because I think that, we're called to go there, and there's a baton.
Christy.
There we go. But I'm going to fill you in on some of that.
I love the city, and
do you want me to?
There's a lot of stuff I love about the city. I can't tell you what. All been.
You want me to fill in some of the details?
Well, tell yourself too.
Okay. Here, fill it. Take a picture. Well, I'm Christy Robinson. I'm also a medical doctor, but I don't actually practice anymore. I do